Ladies and gentlemen, if you can please come to order. Welcome back to day 3 of our annual town meeting. If you can all take a seat. Having been advised by the town clerk, Susan Galvin, that a majority of the town meeting members are present, I hereby declare a quorum is present for the transaction of business, and the meeting is now open. The meeting will come to order. Now, before we begin, Kevin Chisholm Jr. has asked to please speak, and I have granted permission about one of our own town meeting members, Sean Bentley. So, Kevin, if you don't mind.
Good evening. I will be brief. Thank you, Moderator Dillon, and good evening, fellow town meeting members and residents watching far and wide. I'm Kevin Chisholm, town meeting member from Precinct 7. As I mentioned, I'll be very brief, as I know we're looking forward to getting on with tonight's business and hopefully finishing up our work here this evening. There comes a time in life when people decide it is time for a new journey, a new opportunity, or perhaps even a time to say goodbye. Tonight, I rise to recognize someone who, as he prepares to move out of town and begin a new chapter in his young life, deserves our gratitude and our appreciation. That person is my dear friend, Sean Bentley, town meeting member from Precinct 7. Sean, could you come forward? Oh, stand right next to me. Over the past 2 years, Sean has served Milton with great pride and dedication as a town meeting member from Precinct 7, as a trustee of the Milton Public Library, and as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. It was in his very first run for office for town meeting in Precinct 7, in a field of more than 21 candidates, that Sean finished as the top vote getter in Precinct 7. I think it's fair to say, Sean, you knocked on every single door in Precinct 7 as well, warmly greeting our friends and our neighbors, many of whom were eager to hear what this young man had to say about the issues facing East Milton. Prior to our most recent annual town election, he also was the youngest town meeting member currently serving in Milton. Sean is a lifelong Milton resident and a proud graduate of the Milton Public Schools, attending Glover, Pierce, and the high school. And it was the late, great Eddie Baker of the Milton Times, in his weekly With the Athletes column, who would refer to not just standout athletes here in town, but all folks across town as quote-unquote Milton stars. Sean Bentley certainly fits that description as being a Milton star. What makes this especially meaningful for me personally is, despite growing up only a couple minutes apart in East Milton, Sean and I really did not know one another until we met 8 years ago as freshmen at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire. And since then, he has become one of my closest friends. And he's the kind of person who would do absolutely anything for anyone. What always has stood out to me about Sean was not just his willingness to serve, but the sincerity and the care he brought to everything he did. He genuinely loves this town and represents exactly what we hope to see from the future generations of young residents willing to step up and to give back and to play an active role in shaping the future of Milton. And as many of you know here tonight, people who leave Milton often find their way right back here and continuing to contribute to the quality of life here in this town. So Sean, while tonight may be a goodbye, it is certainly not a farewell. Milton will be here waiting for you when you decide to return and come back. Tomorrow, Sean will also turn 26 years old. And I know his mother, Bernadette, and so many members of his family are watching tonight and who may watch this later, are incredibly proud of this young man, as are so many here this evening. So Sean, thank you for your friendship, for your service, and for your dedication to Milton. Thank you to Moderator Dillon, and please join me in recognizing and wishing Sean Bentley well as he prepares for his next endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful tribute, Kevin. And thank you so much for all of your service to the town, both in town meeting and in other ways as well. Sean, we really appreciate you, and we'll miss you, but we'll welcome you back with open arms, as Kevin said. And now we'll turn to the business of the meeting. We will go ahead and test our wonderful electronic clickers. If Mr. Mallett can pull up tonight's question. So in honor of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Mr. Mallett has prepared the question, have you ever traveled to Asia or the Pacific Islands? A is yes, B is no, and C is abstain, or you can press nothing. Thank you. If you have any questions with your clicker, a reminder, you can go up and see Mr. Mallett in the front left of the stage. A lucky 38% of people, or 70 people, have traveled to Asia or the Pacific Islands, and 103 are planning their visit now, and 9 have abstained. If you can go through and look through your name, and again, if you have any questions, feel free, that's better, feel free to ask Mr. Mallett over on the left-hand side of the stage. Thank you. Okay. Looks like everyone's clickers are working, so we can move on. Article 33 was passed by consent, so now we move on to Article 34. You can find Article 34 on page 64 of your warrant, and it states, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 60, Section 15B, to establish a tax title collection revolving fund for the treasurer/collector and to act on anything relating thereto. This was submitted by the Select Board. Mr. Daly, can you speak on this article? Thank you.
Winston Daly, Precinct 2 Town Meeting Member, Chair of the Select Board. Nothing too long here, Madam Moderator. The Select Board reviewed all of the language within, and we encourage the board to move forward with this article.
Thank you. Mr. Funling, would the Warrant Committee like to speak to this article? No? Okay. Then we will open it up for discussion. Is there anyone that would like to speak to Article 34? Okay, I see no one coming down, so we can open this up for a vote. The vote on the floor, or the motion on the floor, excuse me, is the Warrant Committee's recommendation that the town vote to accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 60, Section 15B, as recommended by the Select Board, to establish a tax title collection revolving fund for the treasurer/collector. We can go ahead and open that vote now. That's a majority vote. The article passes 99% in favor, 190 votes yes, 0 no, and 2 abstain. And now we will move on to Article 35. Article 35 is on page 65 of the warrant and says, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of MGLC 59, Section 5, Clause 22nd I, to allow abatements granted to those qualifying pursuant to Clause 22nd, 22nd A, 22nd B, 22nd C, 22nd E, or 22nd F to be increased annually by an amount equal to the increase in cost of living, as determined by the Consumer Price Index for such year, and 2, accept the provisions of MGLC 59, Section 5C and a half to provide an additional property tax exemption of 100% for taxpayers who are already qualify for personal exemptions on their domiciles under Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, including certain blind persons, veterans, surviving spouses, and seniors, and to act on anything related thereto. This was also submitted by the Select Board. Mr. Daly, would the Select Board like to speak to this matter?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Winston Daly, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2, Chairman of the Select Board. As you all see before you for Article 35, you've received these green sheets. I will explain simply what that means. As you see for item 1, we no longer need to vote for that at this meeting. That was voted on in June. That is part of a provision called the HERO Act that allows us to have tax exemptions for veterans. So we would like to have that struck. We will then only be voting on item 2, as you see in the recommended portion of the green sheet. That recommended portion allows us to expand the persons available under the HERO Act, which includes now blind persons, veterans, surviving spouses, and seniors, and act on anything relating thereto. So we do not need to vote on item 1, as that has already been entered. We will only be voting on item 2.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Mr. Funling?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Fundling, Town Meeting Member Precinct 3 and Chair of the Warrant Committee. We're still working with the projector. As Mr. Daly said, there are two clauses. I'm just saying the same thing he said in different words. There are two clauses printed in your warrant. The Warrant Committee several weeks ago voted to accept both those clauses. What we didn't realize until just a few days ago was that clause number 1, town meeting already approved last June at that town meeting. So we don't need to do it again. So clause 1, clause 2, clause 1, all of you already approved it a year ago. So we've changed our recommendation to just be clause 2. It's a little tough following on the piece of paper, but the things next to 2 are our new recommendation. And one eagle-eyed town meeting member found a typo. If you look at, I'm trying to stall while they're pulling up the projector. It's a very small typo, I promise you. So if you look at the bold on the green sheet, look at the very end of the second row, and you'll see it says, for taxpayers who are already qualify. Well, that's not good grammar. So the Warrant Committee voted to take out the word are. So second line of the green sheet, it now will end with the words, for taxpayers who already qualify. And I believe Mr. Milano was going to speak to this more. If not, I would just point to our comments in the warrant that it's doubling tax exemptions for certain individuals. We printed in the warrant approximately what the cost is. And so, the Warrant Committee certainly felt strongly that, we wanted to give tax relief to the people that were so listed.
Thank you, Mr. Fundling. Mr. Milano, did you have a presentation on this? I was not aware. No, okay, great. So for those who are newer among us or who might not remember, a green sheet is when the Warrant Committee changes its recommendation from the recommendation printed in the warrant. So if you look on page 65 of your warrant, as Mr. Fundling said, they had a recommendation on both paragraphs 1 and 2 of the article. On the green sheet, you will see they have a recommendation only as to one of the paragraphs. As Mr. Fundling said, paragraph 2 of the article. So what we vote on is we vote on the recommendation of the Warrant Committee as set forth in the green sheet, if that makes sense to everyone. Now, if anybody else has any questions or comments about Article 35, I'm happy to open it up now for discussion.
I just want to be amazingly
Yes,
clear, Madam
please.
Moderator. The word "are" that I described in great length is crossed out there. It's sort of subtle, but it is crossed out. I want to be sure everyone in town meeting knows what they're voting on. Thank you.
Thank you. And when we get to the vote, I will read the whole thing out loud, sans are. So thank you. If anybody would like to discuss this, now would be the time to come down. Yes, sir, you are recognized.
Michael Chivin, Precinct 2. I don't have anything to say about this article, but I have a question that's kind of related to tax exemptions. It's about tax deferral. There was a member who stood on an earlier night to say that he's not sure he can afford to stay in Milton given the taxes. And I have a question about the senior tax deferral, if you'd let me ask it, Madam Moderator.
I'm not entirely sure that that's really on the scope of this question, Mr. Chinman. So I think not, but thank you. And certainly I think Mr. Milano and themselves will make themselves available to answer any questions you have at a different time. Did anybody else have any other questions regarding Article 35 or comments? If not, we will move to a vote. I will read it out. It is also on the projector. So we vote on, as I said, what's on the green sheet. Recommended that the town vote to accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5C.5, to provide an additional property tax exemption of 100% for taxpayers who already qualify for personal exemptions on their domiciles under Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, including certain blind persons, veterans, surviving spouses, and seniors, and to act on anything relating thereto. And we will now open that up for a vote. This is also a majority vote. The article passes 190 yes, 1 no, and 2 abstain. Thank you. We will now move on to Article 36, which is on page 67 of your warrant, to see if the town will vote to appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds the sum of $1 million to be expended for the purposes of architectural, engineering, and project management services for the design of an addition to and renovation of the fire station located at 815 Blue Hill Avenue, Atherton Street Station, and to act on anything relating thereto. This was submitted by the Fire Station Building Committee, so I will ask Mr. Walsh, the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee, to please speak to this matter.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brian Walsh, proud town meeting member from Precinct 8, and proud to be the chairman of our Fire Station Building Committee. I want to start with there's a pretty strong assumption that many of you don't get an opportunity to really go in and see our fire station. And I have a just under 2-minute video I'd like to start with. I didn't get trained.
Currently here at Engine 4, which is Atherton Street on Blue Hill Ave. This building was built in 1901. This property was dedicated to the town of Milton to be used as a firehouse. And for a building that's been around for 127 years, it's in really, really good shape for a 127-year-old building. This firehouse here up on Blue Hill Ave is the second busiest firehouse. It's served the town well. There's many upgrades that are needed to this building to make it useful for today's fire service and the future. A couple of things that we have going on at headquarters and at Engine 2 is we've built decontamination areas for the firefighters. So when they return from a hazardous call, and not even just from a fire or hazardous material, it's from flu or COVID or any other kind of communicable disease, the firefighters can return back to the station and decontaminate themselves and their equipment to keep themselves and their family safe. And that's obviously missing here. We don't have that here at the station. We don't have the room, and we don't have the building can't support it. It's historic. It's a nice looking building from the outside, but when you get inside and you really look at it, it needs a lot of work. We will rehab this building and need to add on to the building to sustain the fire department for now and for the future, which will add the decontamination areas. It'll add space. The fire trucks don't fit in here like they should. It just can't support a modern fire truck. Where do we go in the future? I don't know where the fire service goes in the future, but I know that this building currently, the way that it stands, cannot support the fire service now and in the future.
Thank you. And clearly, I think you should all recognize the fire chief in that video. Let me get my reading glasses. Thought I could avoid it. So, as I said, we really get to see the stations that need a lot of work. On January 20th, the Fire Station Building Committee did a deep dive on, really it was 6 options, but one of them had 2 versions, so 7 options of what to do to provide a fire station up in that side of town. The options to be considered, they ran from a low of $14 million to a high of $19 million. And the option that we selected was rebuilding, reconfiguring this fire station as it is. By the way, the beautiful rock front, you'll rarely see a fire station like that. But to rehab that station and then add on 3 bays. The chief mentioned that those bays can't even handle a fire truck today because of the size, let alone the future. So we did this. We looked at the 7 options. We chose the option to rebuild that, and frankly, it's gotten a lot of support even since then. At that meeting, we had members of the planning board, our historical commission, and everyone was pretty supportive of the choice we made. So, next slide, please. So, with our Fire Station Building Committee has been around for just 9 years. I spoke to moderator Hiss just a little earlier to confirm. And to give you a little quick background, how do we get here? Okay, well, we approved funding for all 3 fire stations pre-COVID, and it was dedicated funding. We wanted to bid out all 3 at the time, assuming we would get the best pricing to rehab all 3 fire stations. Well, COVID-19 hit before we went out to bid, significantly increasing construction costs, and anyone that's in the business is well aware of that, or any building business. So what we decided to do was to bid out the new fire station headquarters, which we did and we built, and I hope they've had a couple of open houses. I hope you've all had a chance to take advantage of seeing those. And then we bid and are currently building the East Milton Fire Station. Hopefully you've seen that, right down next to St. Agatha's Rectory at St. Agatha's property. But due to COVID costs, we need more funding, more than we originally had planned probably 7 years ago, when we really wrapped our arms around it, to finish the design and build the Atherton Street Station. So what's in front of you tonight is to complete the design. In the fall of this year, we hope and expect to come back before you to seek construction funding. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the East Milton Station is underway. This is a current picture of it, and we hope and expect it to be finished in approximately November. And then we will hope to be for a fall town meeting, and then in front of the town to get funding and approval for the Atherton Street, which we would begin really after the completion of the East Milton Station. Next slide, please. You already saw it in the video, so you got a sense of what it looks like now. But why is the rebuild needed? Well, next slide. Ironically, there's a pretty prominent family in the history of Massachusetts, the Saltonstall family. And ironically, in 1901, a 3-year-old member of that family tragically died and was killed by a fire at a home on Brush Hill Road. You know, if you think of today's, fire engines, you can imagine that having it come from headquarters up there, it's a delay. But think of 1900, a horse-drawn pump wagon being pulled up there, a big delay. And so it really highlighted the strong need to have a fire station on that side of town. And the town responded to that, took the property at Atherton Street and built that fire station. So it was needed then, and frankly, next slide. It's needed even more now. There's more housing, a lot more housing up in that part of town. There's more traffic. The existing 2 bays in the current station cannot accommodate new fire trucks today. They're too tall, they're too wide. The building needs significant repairs, and we need to accommodate more equipment for today's demand of a fire department for future years. And when I say future years, keep in mind, this is well over 100 years since we did Atherton Street, and it was well over 100 years since we did the headquarters. So it's not like the town of Milton, and probably any town, rehabs or refreshes their fire stations on any frequent basis. So we need to get it rebuilt for the decades ahead. And nearby, we have several dense groups of people. Fuller Village, our seniors that are nearby, that will be served by this station. Curry College, our young adults. Many of us in this room send our children off to college somewhere, plenty of good colleges around. Well, there are a lot of families sending their children to Curry College, and we need to provide them adequate public safety. And then we have a little Sprouts daycare, and we see a lot more of these small daycares. They're all right up pending the Atherton Street area, and they all need to be protected. And then lastly, the health and safety of our firefighters. In the video, you saw the chief pointing it out, and it's so true. The cancer rate among firefighters is just way, way too high. And There are many reasons, but not having the appropriate opportunity to completely de-cleanse and decontaminate when they come back from a scene is a key reason. So we need to isolate those diesel carcinogens from the rest of the station and provide appropriate clean-down facilities for our firefighters. So, in conclusion, and again, I thank you for your attention in the past, your support in the past, but I sincerely request that you vote yes on tonight's request to provide the $1 million so we can complete the design, and we'll be back in the fall before we go ahead to get your approval for the construction. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Fundling, I believe you also had a presentation, is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Jay Fundling, Chair of the Warrant Committee and Town Meeting Member Precinct 3. My slides aren't very interesting at first, so I'll just start talking and we'll get them up. Toot sweets. The Warrant Committee recommends approval of this article. It's always good to keep in mind what is the article, there we go. We can start with the first slide. What is the article before us and what the consequences will be? Tonight, we're voting to fund the design of the station. We are not voting for the full funding of the station. But, yeah, there we are. But they're going to spend time and money designing a station over the next several months. And when they come back to us with a design next fall or next spring, that would not be timely for this body at that time to say, no, we'd prefer a smaller station. So in a practical sense, we're being asked if we support the direction that the Fire Station Building Committee is doing, studying a 5-bay station. I'll say more about that in a minute. The Warrant Committee does support this decision. We had questions as a committee, and our main question was, why is it 5 bays? Is a station that large reasonable? So first of all, for me, I had to get up to speed on the terminology. A bay is the area in a fire station that can hold a fire engine. The new central station is 5 bays. The new East Milton station will be a 2-bay station. So by calling the proposed Atherton design a 5-bay station, it sounds like it will be as big as the new central station. That's not exactly correct. And after several discussions with the entire Warrant Committee, with Mr. Walsh and Chief Madden, we were convinced the proposed design is reasonable for further study. As Mr. Walsh says, the proposal is to keep the current building intact, to rehab the current building, to keep it intact. The current building has, call them 2 bays, but they're, well, I'll get into that more in a second. Sorry, I'm going off script again. The current building has 2 small bays, and the plan is to build 3 more full-size bays outside of it. So in some sense, this is not exactly a proposal for a 5-bay station. It's a 3 full-size bay station with 2 smaller non-full-size bays. I've got pictures in a minute. Because I wanted a visualization of what we'd used all this capacity for. I will say that Chief Madden and the subject matter experts on the Warrant Committee got me some beautiful drawings of the stations, and I didn't use them. I wanted something quick and easy. That's how I do my slides. So I wanted to take a look at our town-wide fire station capacity after the new East Milton station and the new Atherton project are finished. So let's start with the next slide. Okay, I'm going to start simple. Let's talk about the new East Milton station. So when there is a call, when there's a fire call to the East Milton station, 1 engine goes out. Only 1 engine. That's what they're staffed for, that's what they're ready for. Now the new East Milton station holds 2 engines. Why does it hold 2 engines if only 1 is used at a time? We all own cars, and some days those cars just don't run. Now, if it's a fire engine that doesn't run, you can't just call up Hertz and say, I'd like to rent a replacement. You've got to have a replacement there. You better have another working engine right there ready to go. And you better have that ready to go in a moment's notice, because as we all know, some car repairs, you can tell they're coming a day or 2 in advance. Sometimes they happen just right then. So you want to have an engine and a spare in East Milton. One that's going to go out to fires and the other one that's there when the regular engine is out for repairs. So that's a simple one. Next slide. Let's talk about the Central Fire Station. This is the one, I hope you've all seen it. It's beautiful. It's a new one. It has 5 full bays. It has 1 regular engine, 1 new tower truck, and 1 new tower truck. Those are the 2 trucks that are sent from Central Fire Station on a call. We want to have a spare, just like we said, so we have a spare ladder truck. I think that the new tower truck is either coming in the next few weeks or did recently come. It's a new purchase. So we'll have the ladder truck as a spare, the tower truck, and a normal fire engine going out from Central. Those fill 3 of the bays. And then the other 2 bays hold, I'll call them 3 SUVs. I'm sure the chief would have a bit more technical term for it, but it's 3 SUVs and 1 boat. You know, they each take up, 2 of those take up the space of 1 fire engine. So my goal was just to see how are we using the space we have and the space we're proposing. That's what we've got. We've got 3 engines and a boat and 3 SUVs. Okay, now what will we have at Atherton and why is 5 bays appropriate? Okay, so the first thing to remember is that the 2 bays in the current Atherton station are not fit for modern fire trucks. They are too small. So we should not think of them as full bays. They're mini bays, so they don't fully count. So what we can put in those small bays to put them to good use is they can hold a hazmat trailer and a brush truck, maybe a backup SUV, but they don't hold full engines. So getting back to what gets sent out if there's a fire. When there's a call at Atherton, 1 engine goes out, just like at East Milton. And we know from the discussion so far that we want at least 1 full-size engine and 1 spare. So, okay, that brings us to needing the 2 small bays we currently have at Atherton. If we assume we want to keep the historic building intact, which is my understanding, if we want to keep the historic building intact, we've got the 2 current bays that are not full bays. And then if we want an engine and a spare, we've got 2 more full bays. Get back to my script. And so what's with the 3rd bay we're building? Well, the chief has talked to us about the dangers of fire in the Blue Hills. He said that it's prudent for us to have 1 large tanker truck that holds more water than can be sent out for those forest fires. The most appropriate place to hold a large water tanker truck is the Atherton station in the middle of the Blue Hills. So the thought is we would have the 2 small bays in the current building dating back to 1900 whatever, and then we would have 3 full-size bays holding an engine, holding a spare, and holding a really big tanker truck to fight forest fires. This seems like a reasonable plan to the warrant committee. Now, one objection might be, we don't own that tanker truck. The chief has talked about applying for a grant to get money to buy it. We don't own it right now. So should we build a building for a truck we don't own yet? Well, we do expect these stations to last for 50 to 100 years. The Fire Station Building Committee has said they think it's prudent to build for sufficient space while we're doing this project. The Warrant Committee supports funding this study for the renovation and expansion of the station. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fenling. And now I believe that Mr. Milano had some words as well. Mr. Milano.
Thank you. I'll just let Karen pull those up, and I'll just touch briefly on the financial aspect of the project. You can go to the next one, please. As Mr. Walsh alluded to earlier, there has been $34,950,000 appropriated for fire station projects to date. That was done over the course of 2 votes in February of 21 and February of 19. That funding has been used to fund the complete construction of the headquarters building, as well as the design of the East Milton building, partial design of the Atherton building, fund the design and build out renovations and improvements to both the building envelope, as well as demolition and abatement, and the construction of a new conference room in the 1st floor of the old fire headquarters building. That conference room was recently renamed in honor of Catherine Dunphy. So the $34,950 has gotten us all of that. However, is not sufficient to fund the complete Atherton project, which is why we're back in front of you now. And the $11 million is the total project estimate for the East Milton station. So if there's any savings on that at the end of the day, that would again be turned to this potential project at Atherton. This presentation is kind of a combination of old ones, so you can click quickly through to slide 7. So this is just a picture of the headquarters. That's this picture of East Milton. That gives you a rendering of what Atherton may look like. Just caveat with may, that's a third full-size bay on the right-hand side. That's an old rendering from before. And now we're turning to Atherton. You can go, that one works. So for town meeting members who recall, the town has a special act that set up a special purpose debt stabilization fund that was set up for the purpose of funding improvements to the fire station projects. That was ultimately approved by a ballot question and when the projects were funded in 2021. And the idea behind that was, let's set aside money as the school projects that were constructed in the early 2000s. As we pay those projects off, we'll tax the property owners in Milton for that, put it aside in a special fund to pay for the fire station projects. We have reached capacity in that based on the cost to build East Milton and the headquarters. Karen, you can go to the next slide, I think. So actually, hold on one second, sorry. I just can't see them, so it's hard to remember. 2 restrictions on that. no more than $50 million on projects, so the money was eligible to be used for fire station projects or DPW projects up to $50 million worth of projects. The other cap was no more than $2.329 million in debt service on an annual basis could be used for projects. So you have to keep those 2 caps in mind when we're thinking about how this is applicable. And if you go to the next slide, it's more of a visual representation of that. So you can see here our headquarters debt has been issued. We have upcoming debt to be issued that would make the first set of years plus the orange, and then the third light blue is what we view to be Atherton. That horizontal bar going across is that $2,329,000 limitation on how much debt service can be supported out of this fund. So as you can see, there is, that fund is not able to support the Atherton project. And if you go to the next slide, we should close it. So what does that mean? So we're treating this project really as a standalone debt exclusion project like we would any other large major capital project. As Mr. Walsh mentioned, the estimated cost at this point is $16.1 million. We would be seeking approval of that project at town meeting in the fall. It will also require a positive vote of the voters at a ballot question, which we anticipate would be on the state election later this year. If we borrow that money, as we usually kind of map these things out very early at 5% interest over 30 years, we're at about $1.3 million in debt service on an annual basis, which will translate to about $127 increase on the average tax on an average single family home increase over the course of the life of the project. That will decline over time, but that's kind of the most impact that you'll see in a given year. And I think that is covering what I wanted to touch on. And if you go to the next slide, it just shows it again in numbers. So again, we just presented this to give you a sense of what the tax levy impact would be at a $16.1 million project. This is probably more detailed than folks are interested in. I would just say that the main takeaways are, with the estimate of about $16.1 million borrowed over 30 years at a 5% interest rate, it's about a $1.3 million increase to the tax levy if the project is ultimately approved, which will translate to about a 1% increase on the average single family home, which is about $130. So I think that covers it financially, and thank you for the time and appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milano. Mr. Daly, would the select board like, no? Okay, great. All right, now we will open it up. Yes, Mr. Walsh, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. One important point I forgot when I was up here earlier, and I think it will help, is we spent some time at this town meeting talking about the Community Preservation Act. Frankly, when that Community Preservation Act went before the residents of the town of Milton to be passed, the first time it failed. And a lot of us were sort of disappointed. And one of the things that we did is we pushed heavily that projects like rebuilding old fire stations is really a community preservation activity, would be a good use of CPA funds. I just want you to know that we have submitted an application for CPA funds. We'll finish up all the detail and get it to the CPA committee by September. And we expect that and hope that some of that money will help us when we do come with the construction. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Okay, we will now open this up to discussion. If anybody else has any comments or questions on Article 36 regarding the fire station. Yes, sir.
Joseph Curran, Precinct 7. Just a couple of things. I'm going to vote yes on this. I want to express that I'm going to vote yes. I was just wondering if we could get an update on the construction delivery method and whether it was 149 or 149A, just for my knowledge. And then I'm just trying to understand what the architectural fees, the engineering fees, and the OPM fees were on Central Station and on the current East Milton Station, and whether those monies were transferred, which I think they were, listening to the presentation, forward, and what our total expenditure in fees is, and specifically maybe if what the percentage to the OPM is on the fees, just so I can understand where this $1 million is being spent.
Okay, great. So the first question, Mr. Kern, is the method of construction delivery. And then the second question I had was the architecture design and OPM piece for East Milton and where we are with the total amount of fees. Is that correct?
Including Central. Since
Oh,
Central
excuse me.
Central is completed now, we should have an accounting of what the total fees were on those 3 line items.
Okay,
for
thank you.
Central, and then what they are maybe right now in East Milton.
Okay, thank you.
For the delivery method, for both East Milton and the headquarters, those were design bid build under 149. We haven't really talked about it, but we could explore construction manager for Atherton, where it's a renovation and it might be a little more complicated, but I believe the plan is to proceed for a design bid build under that. In terms of the architectural and OPM fees, I don't have those at hand. I have them. I can provide them to you if you want to, if I can follow up with you. I just don't have them off the top of my head. I can do a little research to see what files I have on my machine right now, but I don't have a specific answer at the moment.
Just a quick follow-up. Maybe in September we can get an accounting of that to present to the body. But I believe Mr. Milano said that project management services are not part of the $1 million, but the article actually says that it's architecture, engineering, and project management services, so I assume that was the OPM fees. I don't know the answer to that question.
So the town is under contract with an owner's project manager now, Vertex, that would continue through the completion of Atherton that is included of this project. I was referring to if we went for a construction manager. There are no fees associated with construction manager right now, but that would be a future decision for the Fire Station Building Committee in terms of construction procurement that hasn't been made as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sheridan.
Linda Lee Sheridan, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 9. I rise to just say thank you to the Fire Station Building Committee, who has been working tirelessly and given their time and their talents and dedication for the past, I think you said 9 years, Brian. So I know there's more people than Brian that are on the committee, but just a huge vote of thanks for all of your committee for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sheridan. Mr. Kelly.
Brian Kelly, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. Couple of concerns. My office is beside the new East Milton Station, and I watched the design, I watched it grow. They're not using real plywood on that building. They're using a manufactured type of plywood. Has a lot of glue in it and things like that. I heard the head of the warrant committee mention, when we looked at this, we looked at a 50 to 100 year lifespan. Those products are not made to last that long. They're also very important that the buildings are sealed so that moisture doesn't get in. What I want to know is, what I was surprised, I went over to the Falcone building, and they're building that with really nice plywood. That's an investment for his family and grandchildren. But the buildings that we're building now do not have that lifespan. And you're not supposed to get it wet. It's supposed to be closed in as soon as it's put on. Well, for about 3.5 months this year, during the winter months, that part of that board was on that building totally exposed. So I don't want the warrant committee or anyone else in this room to think we're gonna have buildings that last 100 years like the one that was shown tonight. Another concern is, it's a little disappointing that the CPA committee submitted an application, or we approved an application last night for money for Wharf Park, knowing that there's been some conversations about using CPA money now to fund the Atherton station. So last night was, the previous article was the precedent. Now they're gonna come back and ask for more. So there go the parks, there go the community initiatives that we were sold on when we approved the CPA, and we're going right down that we set the precedent. And when you don't have any money in the CPA, you can thank the 2026 town meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any other people that wish to speak to this article? Okay, I don't see any. So we will proceed to a vote. The motion on the floor is recommended that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $1 million for the purpose of architectural, engineering, and project management services for the design of an addition to and renovation of the fire station located at 815 Blue Hill Avenue, Atherton Street Station, which may also involve design and construction of a freestanding structure on the same site to provide additional space, including payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, or pursuant to any other enabling authority. And I note that this requires a 2/3 vote to pass. And the vote passes 96%, 192 yes, 6 no, 2 abstain. That does meet the 2/3 threshold requirement. And now we will move along to Article 37. Articles 37 through 41 concern renewable energy. And Mr. Milano is going to walk us through a presentation on all of them, and then we'll delve into the specific articles. Mr. Milano.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Nicholas Milano, Town Administrator. So I will talk through each of the next 5 articles at a high level, so to give a little bit of background and context for each of them. You can go to the next one. Article 37 is an authorization for the Select Board to enter into and contracts with for an energy credit agreement. An energy credit agreement is not a purchase of electricity or purchase of power. What it would be purchasing credits from a solar farm that is built elsewhere in Massachusetts. So commercial solar opportunities exist throughout the state, and developers will build solar and sell that energy to the grid, generating credits that they're able to then turn around and sell. DOER and DPU at the state, the Department of Public Utilities and the Department of Energy Resources have regulations that require those developers to try to go to public entities first in order to allow cities and towns, municipalities, and nonprofit entities to benefit from solar projects. So the town would purchase, if we execute and enter into an agreement for energy credit agreement, we would purchase these credits at a discount and then apply them to our electricity bills through Eversource. And go to the next slide. So the benefit for the town would be to use 82.5 cents to buy a dollar's worth of credits. We're buying these at a steep discount. We would achieve energy savings without incurring any risk of leasing or having ownership responsibility for a solar project. There are some risks associated, as there would be with any kind of a financial transaction like this. They do require long-term agreements. The solar developers want to ensure that their clients will be in place for a long term. There would also be a risk that we could have more credits than we could possibly use to apply to our bills. The way to mitigate that would be to enter into credit agreements that are less than what our current production is and our current usage. And also just by carefully managing how we apply those credits to our accounts. We have been in negotiations with a company called Rewild, which is building 6 solar projects in southeastern Massachusetts over the next 18 to 24 months. They have proposed a 17.5-cent discount for each credit on a 25-year term for approximately 80% of our current electrical load. This specific agreement is not near complete at this point. However, that is kind of the outlines of the proposal that we've been in discussions with Rewild over, and we have debriefed with the select board about that. But this article would authorize the select board to enter into that credit agreement or some potential future credit agreement. It's not specifically authorizing any one specific agreement. So that's Article 37. Article 30, just before we move into Article 38, in terms of just an overall update in terms of what we have for solar in Milton, there are solar panels on each of the schools as well as Town Hall. We have a power purchase agreement, so a private entity owns the solar panels on Milton High School, the middle school, Tucker, and Glover, and we have a agreement to purchase all the electricity from those panels at, which is currently 9 cents a kilowatt hour. And then we have 2 town-owned facilities, one on the Town Hall and one in Cunningham and Collycott, where obviously that energy is now being used by those facilities at no cost. Next one. So the next 4 articles each deal with all the requirements necessary to enter into a solar power purchase agreement. The first one is Article 38, which is a pilot agreement to authorize the select board to enter into payment in lieu of tax agreements for potential additional energy facilities that are located on town-owned land. These facilities might be solar or battery installations. The purpose of allowing a pilot agreement is that the Department of Revenue considers solar panels or battery storage devices on town-owned property as taxable if they're owned by a private entity. So one way that the developers look to have certainty in their financial cost is by entering into pilots with the cities and towns that they're operating in public facilities on, so that there isn't a significant upfront cost associated with the personal property tax on the solar, but rather that they can bake that tax cost into the life of the agreement. In addition to that, the goal of the town trying to get solar installations is not necessarily to drive tax revenue, but to decrease our energy costs. So if our savings can be on the energy costs rather than higher energy costs, but we're getting tax revenue, that is a goal of a pilot agreement. So the bottom line is, if we have future installations on town-owned land that would be taxable if it's owned by a private entity, and this pilot agreement would allow the select board to enter into agreements to have a more consistent financial impact both for the town and for the private owner. So Articles 39 to 41, and you can go to the next slide, are again similar in structure and scope, but they address different locations and they're separated by location. They each transfer or authorize the use of land for solar or battery storage. They authorize leases for solar or battery storage facilities. They authorize easements for construction and for operating those facilities. And they authorize the approval of entering into contracts to purchase energy from those. So those are broadly referred to as power purchase agreements or PPAs. And then lastly, they authorize kind of any catch-all, any other action that would be required to move one of these projects along. Article 39 addresses town hall and the fire headquarters. So it authorizes the use of the town hall parcel, which includes town hall, the fire headquarters, the basketball court that you see there, the chemical building, and the old fire headquarters. So it authorizes the use of that parcel for solar. And our intention here is to put solar on the top of the Milton Fire Headquarters. We're currently working with a company called Select on the terms of a power purchase agreement. They do a lot of municipal projects in Massachusetts. Our annual production that we're looking at as a potential for an installation on the headquarters is about approximately 164,000 kilowatt hours with a proposed rate around 5 cents per kilowatt hour, excuse me. So we're looking at potential annual savings about $24,000 in year one. The article also authorizes the use of town hall for solar, but that's more of a catch-all provision as the town hall already has solar that we own, but if and when we reach the end of the useful life of those panels, or if we reach the end of the useful life of the roof and need to remove everything, it would give us the opportunity to enter into a future PPA at the town hall. So again, the primary purpose to Article 39 is to get panels on the roof of the fire headquarters. Article 40 is about the library and the adjacent library parking lot. Again, it would be a goal of ours to try to have some panels on top of the library. That roof is already a little bit older than we would normally like to put new panels on. We also included the parking lot in case it becomes financially viable to consider a potential canopy on that location. The article does transfer the parking lot parcel, which was left in the custody of the select board for library purposes, so it transfers it to the Board of Library Trustees for library purposes and for solar purposes. So like I said, we're exploring opportunities here. We're not certain if things would pencil out to enter into a private agreement, but it's on our radar as something to consider, and it's why we're seeking authorization at this time. And then Article 41 is related really to the animal shelter. We completed the construction of the animal shelter last year. It is a 100% electric building for both heat and electricity. The intention here is rooftop solar on the animal shelter parcel. We would consider and are looking at whether a smaller ground-mounted installation on or adjacent to or behind the shelter may make more sense than roof-mounted if we can stay away from the roof. The article also transfers Lot 9, which is where the animal shelter sits and points kind of southeast, I guess. It's a large parcel. The entire Lot 9 that's up there is 32 acres. 3.5 acres is where the animal shelter sits and the area around there north of the access road. The rest of the parcel that the animal shelter sits on is under lease to Granite Links at this time. And we've received some questions as to why it's under the Board of Health. In 1954, when town meeting purchased the land, they authorized the select board, or the Board of Selectmen at the time, to acquire the property and also authorize it to see here. The Board of Health to exercise in connection with said parcel all usual and necessary powers. So we view this as like a title clearing action that will clear title for a potential lease for a solar project at the animal shelter. And just in case folks are curious what that parcel actually looks like, if you click to the next couple slides, there's a couple different representations of that visually. So here you see an assessor's map. So this is not really north-south, but just vertically. The place in the red rectangle is where the animal shelter is located, and the balance of that lot as you head south is under lease to Granite Links. And then the next slide will show you that in a little bit more clear detail. So again, that blue line that you see where the access road currently sits is kind of that dividing line between where town-owned land is. Well, it's all town-owned land, but where the lease line is. And the animal shelter you can see is that on the left-hand side of that parcel. So that's the overview on each of those articles. They're authorization articles. They're not entering into any specific agreement. They're authorizing the select board and the library trustees in that article to enter into agreements for solar. I will note we had lengthy conversations with the select board in terms of whether it made more financial sense for the town to purchase, own, and install solar panels, and it may. We're not excluding that as an opportunity. Power purchase agreements are attractive because they limit our risk and puts the risk on the developer. It does mean that the financial benefit is not as great as it might be if you own solar panels. For a large project, it would certainly be a lot more expensive, and we would have to incur significant design funds, project manager, construction manager to ensure everything is built the way we want it to be built. Alternatively, under power purchase agreements and leases, we can benefit financially without having to incur those risks. So for the animal shelter and the library specifically, I'd say those might make more sense as town-owned, but for now, our primary purpose is the fire headquarters, and we're working towards a power purchase agreement for that. And happy to take questions, because I know there's a lot with those articles, and town council and I spent a lot of time working on them, so he and I are both prepared, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. So we'll turn first to Article 37. Mr. Daly, did you have anything else to add to Article 37? Mr. Funling, did the Warrant Committee have anything else to add to Article 37? No. Okay. Opening it up for questions. I see Mr. Kelly. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Before you give authorization to different groups to negotiate PPAs with these solar companies, have you considered hiring a company like Power Options? It's a nonprofit energy buy-in consortium in Massachusetts. They've helped over 500 projects, and they represent the town in these negotiations. If you've seen some of these solar agreements on the residential side, they're about 80 or 90 pages of detailed information. I don't really expect the library trustees or the employees of the trustees to have to take the time and the energy to negotiate power purchase agreements, nor any other group in the town. So there are consortiums like Power Options available, and have you considered them? And if not, why not?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Milano?
Yes, Milton is a member of Power Options, and how that works is Power Options does a competitive procurement and selects an operator. They've selected Select, which is why we're working with them for the fire headquarters. And we've already started working with Town Council in terms of what Select demands in terms of lease agreements and power purchase agreements in terms of legal language. But yeah, the pathway we're going through is exactly that pathway through Power Options.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go over here, and then we'll come back to you, Ms. Sheridan. Go ahead.
Hi there, Ellen Stoddard, Precinct 3 Town Meeting Member. I just wanted to thank those of you who've been involved in trying to look for ways to cut or lower electricity costs across the town. I'm a member of the Community Electricity Aggregate Program, and I have the 100% green, which is an incredible opportunity for me to lock into my rate. So I wanted to know how specifically Article 37 impacts residents, or whether it's just municipal or other opportunities for furthering the CEA program.
Article 37 is specifically in terms of the town supply contracts, and the town's electric bills. So if we purchase credits, we would be applying them to the town's bills. There are community solar opportunities that affect residents directly, but that is not what we would be pursuing under Article 37. And to the member's point, if you are not on the town's aggregation program, you can learn more about it at miltoncea.com, I believe. There's a direct link from the town website. So what that is, it's a 3-year set rate for your electricity. So you can sign up whether you choose the 100% green, a 10% green, or the basic option. You can lock in your electricity prices through a procurement that the town has done on behalf of residents. But Article 37 specifically relates to the town's electric bills.
Thank you, and it is miltoncea.com.
Thank you. Okay, coming over here, Ms. Sheridan.
Hi, Linda Lee Sheridan, Precinct 9 Town Meeting Member. I know you mentioned the canopies, and I find this very interesting because Dedham, if you drive through Dedham, all of their schools now have built canopies over their parking lots, and you see them in many other communities as well. So I just wondered if there was a value added to going with that option and not having to worry about aging roofing, and I'm sure you've considered all of this. I just wondered if you could follow up a little bit more about that, please. Thank you.
Again, working with Select, we've had them review all town sites in Milton. They've identified the high school as potentially financially feasible in the sense that it would potentially enable a canopy project at a rate that might be of cost savings to the town. So the question there really is, does that pencil out? And then I think the second question for smaller sites is, it'll probably not be necessarily a cost savings, but is there a cost that the town wants to take on for the benefit of canopies, because they do add value in other ways. But as of right now, the sites that we're looking at wouldn't lend themselves to canopies under that purpose. It would be authorized under the authorization language that's coming here, but I wouldn't expect any of these projects to be canopies, perhaps a future project at one of the school sites.
Okay. Does anybody else wish to speak to Article 37? Okay, I'm seeing none, so we'll turn to our vote. Recommended that the town vote to approve the article as printed in the warrant. This one is a majority vote. Okay, Article 37 passes, 184 yes, 8 no, and 6 abstain. We'll take a 2-minute break so I could talk to the town clerk. Type 2. Thank you. Two-minute break. In the interest of time and how well we're doing so far, I'm going to move right on ahead to Article 38. If everyone can get their seats. Article 38, which is on page 68 of your warrant, reads, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to enter agreements for payments in lieu of taxes or pilot pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 45th, or any other enabling authority with the owners of renewable energy facilities located within the boundaries of the town for terms of up to 30 years from the date such facilities begin commercial operation, and take any actions and execute any other documents or ancillary agreements to accomplish the foregoing, and to implement and administer the pilot agreements, all of which agreements and documents shall be on such terms and conditions and for such consideration as the select board deems in the best interests of the town, or do or act on anything related thereto. Mr. Daly, would the select board wish to speak on Article 38? No. Mr. Fundling? Would the warrant committee like to speak on Article 38? Okay. Would anybody else like to speak on Article 38? You may come down. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody, so we can move to our vote. Recommended that the town vote to approve the article as printed in the warrant. This is, again, a majority vote. Article 38 passes, 185 yes, 7 no, 3 abstain. Now we will move on to Article 39, which is on page 69 of your warrant. To see if the town will vote to transfer the parcel shown on the Town of Milton Assessor's Map as Map D, Block 52, Lot 4, from the Select Board for general municipal purposes to the Select Board for such purposes and for the purpose of leasing portions of property and/or structures thereon for the installation of privately owned solar photovoltaic, generation and/or storage facilities. And further, to authorize the Select Board to lease by contract portions of the property listed below, and further to authorize, I read that already, and/or structures thereon for the installation of privately owned solar photovoltaic generation and/or storage facilities. Grant easements on, over, and/or under the property for the construction and operation of such facilities. 3, contract for the purchase of the electricity and/or solar credits generated by such facilities. And 4, take any other actions and execute any other documents and/or contracts to accomplish the foregoing and implement and administer the contracts and easements, all of which contracts and easements shall be for terms of up to 30 years commencing on the date such facilities begin commercial operation, and on such other terms and conditions and for such consideration as the Select Board deems in the best interest of the town. And then listed the Milton Fire Headquarters, Milton Town Hall as set forth in the warrant, and to act on anything relating thereto. Mr. Daly, does the Select Board have any comments? Mr. Funling, does the Warrant Committee have any comments? No. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions regarding Article 39? Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Roxanne Musto, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 5. I have a question in terms of the storage facilities. I would like to hear from the fire chief the safety of those. I'd like to know what size we're talking about potentially. And then as far as in general, I know we've talked about putting panels on the roofs. If Mr. Milano can speak to that a little bit more in terms of maintenance, if you have a roof leak, owned versus rented panels, and give a little bit more detail on how that would work and costs. But I think I would really like to hear from the fire chief if he's still here. Thank you.
So, Ms. Musto, I have a few questions. One from the fire chief, the safety of the storage facilities. And then regarding, maybe for Mr. Milano, questions about the roof leaks and replacement of the roof, and questions on cost and whether the panels are owned or leased. Is that correct?
Yes, if they're owned or leased, what's the process and cost if we have an issue? You know, do we have to pay a company to come back out and take the tiles off and replace a roof, or, you know, things like that? Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Walsh has an answer.
Madam Moderator, I just wanted to point out, our fire chief has been here for 3 nights of town meeting, and just before when we had our small break, I went up and congratulated him on the fact that we're going to go ahead with the design of Atherton Street. He was a little beaten, he has left, so my apologies. I encouraged him to leave, I have to admit.
Thank you. Maybe Mr. Milano can shed some light.
So primarily, the focus here is not the storage facilities, it's really getting authorization for those. The larger installations might lend themselves to a battery. We do have a grant right now that we're working through, again, Power Options with, to assess whether a battery is even feasible in the town center area, and if it, and how large or small it might need to be feasible. So I would say that's something we're evaluating. I wouldn't expect any immediate action on that, but we're sensitive to those concerns the department deals with, and their policy right now is in terms of electric vehicles, ensuring that charging stations are outside. So we're aware of and sensitive to those issues around concerns around battery. You know, believe they're very safe, but that's not a primary motivation of where we're at on those articles, A, and then B, what we're looking at a feasibility study to see what that might look like for the town center, so we can share with the public more information as that winds its way through. The proposal from Select right now for the fire headquarters is roof-mounted solar panels only. In question to the roof question, that, you know, that's why we're sensitive to the library, as that's an older building already. The fire headquarters and the animal shelter were designed to be solar ready, designed with roofs to take on roof-mounted solar panels, designed with conduits accordingly. As part of their evaluation process, we're working through with the providers. They've come in to do a site walk. They've reviewed the roof warranty, so their installation has to meet the roof warranty, and done a structural analysis just to confirm that there's no issues there. So we take a close dive as we go through each of those issues. So that if an issue were to arise, we know the warranty to go after, the installer to go after. And the biggest thing with all of these is just to make sure if there is an issue, we don't just fix it and move on, but fix it, identify what the cause was, and if it was them, to go after the installer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Musto. Does anybody else have any questions regarding Article 39 or comments? Mr. Kern?
Joe Kern, Precinct 7. I'm sorry. I probably should have got up and had this ready for you. I was just wondering, for solar panels can be persnickety, and for anybody who's ever kind of been involved with a solar farm, and I'm just curious, you know, in listening to the presentation, we have a lot of solar panels in town, and for the fiscal years being reported, I was just curious how many days of solar production data were collected, how many of those were there panels actively generating solar, and more importantly, were the inverters fully operational during the reporting period, and were downtime, reduced output limited because of maintenance or system faults that affected the production?
Again, some of the specifics I'll have to follow up with you. And related to the 4 that we have power purchase agreements with, we've been monitoring their production targets to make sure that they hit their production target. We received a check, I don't know, maybe a month ago from them because they underhit their production target, so they owed us money for that purpose. And any kind of maintenance issues are on the provider. In terms of the town-owned ones, I'd have to check and confirm with facilities, and we can follow up with you on those, but they defray our energy costs as it is. And that's where we have annual service contracts to to monitor and stay on them. So that risk is on us and something breaks, whereas the power purchase agreements, they're monitored by the owner, and then if they don't hit their targets, they owe us a make-up payments as a result.
Thank you. Okay, I see no one else sitting down here. Anybody else? Last chance on Article 39. Okay, we will open it up for a vote. On the Warrant Committee's recommendation that the town vote to approve the articles as printed in the warrant, Article 39, you'll note, requires a 2/3 vote to pass. The article passes 179 to 14. 179 yes, 14 no, 4 abstain. That does meet the 2/3 threshold. Now, moving on to Article 40, I have been asked, I agree, it is largely the exact same as 39, but with respect to the library. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read the whole thing, but what I will read is enough that it will count for the purposes of reading it, for the purposes of keeping record of this for town meeting. So Article 40 says, to see if the town will vote to transfer the following parcels of land in the manner described as set forth in the warrant. Okay. This was submitted by the Select Board. Mr. Daly, any comments? Mr. Funling? No. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments with respect to Article 40? I see no one getting up, so we can move right on to a vote for Article 40, which is the recommendation by the warrant committee that the town vote to approve the article as printed in the warrant. Again, this will be a 2/3 required vote to pass. We have 91% yes, or 179, 14 no, 4 abstain. That passes by more than the 2/3 vote required. Okay. Now we will move on to Article 41, which again, I will not read the entirety to you. It is largely the same as Articles 39 and 40, to see if the town will vote to transfer the parcel shown on the Town of Milton Assessor's map as set forth in the warrant. Submitted by the Select Board, Mr. Daly. Any comments? Mr. Funling? I'm going to keep offering. Okay. We'll go to you, and then to you, and then to Ms. Musto.
Lori Stillman, Precinct 2. I'm just curious whether, I know that these articles have to do with setting up the ability to move towards using solar panels, et cetera, in the town, but do we have any sense of how much money the town might benefit by entering all these agreements?
It's arranged, so in terms of the fire headquarters one, to go back to that one, that was, we estimate right now we'd be buying energy at around 5 cents a kilowatt hour, which we forecast could be savings around $24,000 in the first year, and then slightly more each year thereafter if energy costs continue to rise. On the animal shelter one, not specifically, it's a much smaller roof. It's a 4,000 square foot building. It's a smaller building. So I don't have numbers to provide for you, but all of these are, cost-saving measures that would also lock in low electricity rates. So that not only they're saving from where electricity rates are now, they'd be locking in for the long term. As we've seen, those costs just continue to escalate year over year.
Do you have a follow-up question, Ms. Stillman? No? Okay, we'll go.
Hello, good evening, Joan Fall, Precinct 7. And I am rising to ask the question about the animal shelter, because it's such a large parcel of land. It seems like it's different than just a building solar panel. Is the intention to build a solar farm on 20+ acres of land? And if so, what are the implications as far as battery storage and solar panels? I'm in particularly concerned about if there was some sort of event where the batteries caught fire, there would be a need for evacuation and a disaster plan. And I just wonder if that's been addressed at all. I had wanted to ask the fire department, but I know they're not here.
No, the intention of the article is to pursue a small installation on or adjacent to the animal shelter to defray our electrical costs broadly and specifically with regards to the shelter. The property, as I try to display with the slide, 3.5 acres is that rectangular parcel north of the access road where the animal shelter sits. The rest of it is about 29 acres that's south of the access road. All of that land is currently leased to Granite Links for another 25 years or so. So all of that land is tied up for the immediate future. The intention and what we're seeking is a small project on the animal shelter roof, or if smaller ground mounted next to it make sense, then that's something we'd look at. In terms of battery, again, a battery up there would not likely make any sense in relation to the size of the solar that might be up there and size of the shelter. We're looking currently to have a traditional diesel generator installed on the site as backup power. That conduit is placed, there's a concrete pad there for it. We're just looking to install it now. So in terms of a battery for the building isn't even really necessary. So that is not something that's on our radar right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fall. Ms. Musto?
Thank you. Roxanne Musto, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 5. First question is, how much is the cost of electricity currently being used at the animal shelter? If Mr. Milano could answer that. The second comment I have is, I came across in 2014, there was an October special election, and in that election, that article is Article 6. It was a change of purpose for the land off landfill access road. It's this exact property that we're voting on tonight, and at that time, it voted to transfer the care, custody, and control of the land described below from the Board of Selectmen for municipal dump purposes to the Board of Selectmen for general municipal purposes, which land is known on Town of Milton Assessor's maps as that portion of Section 1, Block 38D, Lot 9, located west of the former landfill access road and containing plus or minus 3.0725 acres, and that portion of Section 1, Block 38D, Lot 8, located west of the former landfill access road and containing plus or minus 0.28 acres. Now, my confusion is that we have this article here that mentions the Board of Health, yet we already had an article in 2014 that never had the Board of Health in that. So I'm trying to figure out what happened between the 1950s and 2014 if the Board of Health was already removed. Should there not have been an article back then? I do have a copy of this article. I found this on the website under October 2014, but the wording is quite similar to what we have before us, where we mention the Board of Health, yet the Board of Health was not in 2014. So my question is, was there an article between the 50s and 2014 that removed the Board of Health, or did that somehow never happen and should have happened? So two questions. One is the process on this, and the other one is the cost monthly. If you want me, I can show you that quickly. If you want to, I printed it off, if you want to see it. For Town Council.
Thank you, Darren Klein, KP Law, through the moderator. I think we did go back and try to look at the different votes, and I think really the importance for tonight is really clearing the title moving forward. And so regardless of, whether or not whatever happened in 2014 or 2016 or any other vote, if this article passes tonight, it'll be held by the select board for general municipal purposes and also to the select board for the purpose of leasing and negotiating the agreements that have been set forth in every article. So even if it's already held by the select board for general municipal purposes, at the end of tonight, it'll be held by the select board for general municipal purposes and for the purposes of negotiating these agreements and everything it says in the article. So this will clear the title going forward.
Ms. Musto, you had another question.
Just a follow-up. Thank you for that. I guess my question is, as a follow-up to that, we had approved an animal shelter on that property. So do we have to go back and, have some kind of an article? I know this is going forward, but we've already done things. Is this the proper procedure at this point?
No, you do not. Again, the main purpose of tonight's vote is to clear the title so the select board will continue, assuming that the 2016 article was the way you read it, that the select board will now hold that for the general municipal purposes and also for this purpose. It does not, nothing else needs to be done regarding the animal shelter. That's staying.
Mr. Milano.
Just to the question on electricity costs, so the animal shelter is on the town's broader electric contracts. Currently, we're paying just north of 14 cents a kilowatt hour right now for supply of electricity, and then we pay also all the distribution charges. That's the other half of the bill through Eversource. It is 100% electric, so it was using heat pumps throughout the winter, which pull from the electric grid rather than from gas or oil. So that was, I think we were probably around, if I remember right, about $1,600 a month on electrical costs for the shelter in the kind of the peak of the winter months. I don't have the summer costs off the top of my head.
Bill Murphy, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. I oppose this as it's written. It's not clarified. There's 3 acres of land there, and we don't know. You guys haven't said what you're going to do. If you're going to build solar panels. I mean, if it's just the animal shelter that we're going to put panels on, that's fine. But there's 3 acres. It goes right up to residential houses, and it's a blank check. You guys haven't, there's no design, there's no nothing. I just don't think it's written well at this point in time. Can you clarify if the solar panels are going to go, it's all wood, it's all forest area to the right of that animal shelter. Are we clearing trees or there's no specifics in it? It's like a little clarification that way.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Milano? Okay, 1 second.
Yes, the intention that we've always been looking at for this portion of the project has always been a roof-mounted solar project. The language is broader and would be more permissive than that, but the select board has not discussed, and I think looking to the board doesn't have intention of a ground-mounted, clear-cutting 3 acres of forest for a ground-mounted solar next to the animal shelter. When I mentioned, a smaller ground-mounted, if there are smaller panels like in the immediately adjacent where there isn't trees today, that might work as an alternative to roof-mounted. It's something we would consider and bring to the board for discussion. But right now, the purpose And the way the building was built to take roof-mounted solar to defray those energy costs. But we have not talked about anything bigger than that, and there is not an intention for something much larger than that.
You can ask a follow-up. Go ahead.
Can we rewrite the motion to just the dog pound? I mean, that's a blank check. It's 3 acres of land.
Do you wish to make a motion to amend to that effect?
I would like to make a motion to amend it to just the dog pound.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Fundling, Town Meeting Member Precinct 3 and Chair of the Warrant Committee. One thing I would like to point out to this body is something Mr. Milano mentioned a few minutes ago, which is this article grants the town the opportunity to enter into a lease of solar panels. The town already has the right to build solar panels they own. They had that right before this is passed. They have this right after this is passed. Mr. Milano mentioned it, and the Warrant Committee discussed it in the context of we should be careful to think, does it make more sense to own? Does it make more sense to lease? So that's how it came up in our discussion. And we still hope the town will make a prudent decision versus own versus lease. But I think it might be relevant to think about the fact that the concerns the prior speaker raised are valid concerns, but right now the town has the right to not lease, but own whatever solar panels they want. So that may be something to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Fundling. We'll give the select board a moment. Yes. The point of order for those that could not hear it that Ms. Agostino made was if people can kindly, as Mr. Fundling did, repeat their names, even if they've spoken before, and then also what precinct they're from, so that the record can clearly reflect who was the speaker. Thank you, Ms. Agostino, for that. Not yet? Okay. While we're waiting for the select board, Mr. Murphy, do you have specific proposed language that you would like to give to the warrant committee clerk?
I defer to the select board on the term, on the writing, but just the dog pound.
Okay, let's hear from the select board, Mr. Murphy. Okay. If this is going to take more than 2 minutes, let's all go to the bathroom. Let's take a quick break. If everybody can come to order. Thank you for that little break as we worked through that motion to amend. First, we'll have town council go through the motion to amend. Then we'll hear from the select board and the warrant committee if they have any thoughts.
All right, Darren Klein from KP Law through the moderator. I have consulted with the motion maker on the amendment, And basically, it will be to, the amendment will be to recommend, to pass the article as written in the warrant with the following change that's noted up there. And it's limiting, as you can see in the language that was added, it's limiting the authority for the lease and all of the other items to that portion of the property. And just so I can read it with you, it says, limited to the animal shelter building or currently disturbed property adjacent thereto. And that was with consultation with the motion maker on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Mr. Daly?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Winston Daly, Precinct 2, Town and Meeting Member, Select Board Chair. The Select Board has voted to support the amendment, and thank you to the amendment maker as written and seen here. Thank you.
Mr. Funling?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Funling, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3, Warrant Committee Chair. The Warrant Committee has voted to not support the amendment.
Okay. Would anybody else like to speak on the motion to amend? So we're not talking about the underlying article necessarily, we're talking about the motion to amend. Mr. Chimman?
Michael Chimman, Precinct 2. I just would like an explanation of what disturbed property means.
Thank you, Darren Klein, KP Law. It's the part of the property that's already been disturbed by the construction. So that will not require any further clearing of woods or anything of that nature. So property that's already been disturbed by the current building.
Any other questions or comments about the motion to amend Article 41? Okay, I see none, so we're going to go to a vote on the motion to amend. Because it's a vote on the motion to amend, that will be a majority. So, 150 people voted yes to amend the article, 41 voted no, and 3 abstained. Okay. Now we go back to Article 41 as amended. Does anybody else have any comments about Article 41 now amended? Mr. Walker.
Leroy Walker, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 10. Point of order, Madam Moderator.
Yes.
It was a friendly amendment. It amended the original motion. We voted on the amended language. I think we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Well, I also see nobody else with any comments. So, to that end, if people would like to vote on Article 41 as amended. One second.
Thank you, Darren Klein, through the moderator. Although we did assist with the language, it was not considered a friendly amendment. It was still the motion maker's amendment. We just assisted with the verbiage.
In addition, this has to be a 2/3 vote. So for clarity, let's have a vote on Article 41 as amended. So yes, if you're in favor of the article as amended, no if you're not, and abstain if you want to abstain. And again, this is a 2/3. 91% yes, 178 yes, 14 no, 3 abstain. That passes the 2/3 majority required. And we move on to our last article, Article 42. Article 42 begins on page 72 of the warrant and says, not going to read the whole thing, but to see if the town will vote to amend its zoning bylaw, Chapter 275, Article 1, definite definitions, as set forth in the warrant. And I believe we have a report by the chair of the planning board, Ms. Meredith Hall.
Good evening, Meredith Hall, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3, Chair of the Planning Board. I would first like to begin by just thanking Jim Davis, our outgoing Planning Board member, for his many hours and commitment to the Planning Board over the last few years. I would also like to welcome our newest Planning Board member, Hal Munger. Thank you, please welcome Hal. And Cheryl Tagayas, welcome back to the Planning Board. That's great. So, thank you all for serving. I would also now really like to begin by thanking Larry Johnson and Macy Lee of the Warrant Committee, John Zikowitz, the chair of the Sign Review Committee, Elizabeth Manning and Avanti Grady of the Planning Department, Michael White of our building commissioner, Carolyn Murray of KP Law, and of course, my fellow planning board members who have put a tremendous amount of effort and time into this article in order to get it right. For years, we have had a sign bylaw that is unclear and confusing for not only the applicants, but the planning department, the building department, and the sign review committee. The planning board is pleased to present a sign bylaw article that will update and detail an improved process and provide clarity for those applying. I would like to introduce our town planner, Elizabeth Manning, to provide our presentation this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. And thank you, Ms. Manning.
Good evening, Liz Manning, Planning Director. Thank you, Madam Moderator. So I just wanted to, again, thank the combined effort of many individuals to put this together. Lots of consultation with different departments, with the building department, with the town administrator's office, with just a lot of hard work and a lot of collaboration went into this effort. So I guess we're ready for the first slide. Get my notes here. So as the chairperson noted, there's been a long history of confusion and a strong need to clarify the bylaw language for signs. This proposed bylaw codifies the sign review and approval process in a clear and concise way. It offers more flexibility to the sign review committee to recommended changes as styles, technology, and taste change over time. And it clearly lays out the approval and appeal process, very important. It attempts to balance the need for businesses to inform customers of their services with protecting the overall character of the town. So the process that was followed is the planning board met in session over multiple meetings, beginning in December of 2025, consulted extensively with the sign review committee, town council at KP Law, the building commissioner, the town administrator, the Board of Appeals, and the town engineer. The Milton Chamber of Commerce received a presentation on the bylaw at their meeting held April 2nd. After a public hearing held March 26th, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend the signed bylaw article. Once the bylaw is approved this evening, hopefully, by town meeting, planning staff will work to update the sign and facade design handbook. So next slide. So this, another example of the collaborative effort here. This flow chart was suggested by Larry Johnson, warrant committee member, also sign review committee member. So we've been working with this flow chart to sort of help people understand how this works. An applicant submits their sign review materials to the building commissioner. The building commissioner certifies the materials are complete within 7 days. There was a long discussion about extending that to 30 days in deference to the building commissioner, who has an enormous amount on his plate, but we have kept it at the recommended 7 days, which we think is very, very workable. At this time, we're going to put a lot of work in the pre-application part of the process to make sure that an applicant is ready to go when they make their application to the building department. So that application goes to the building commissioner. It is then forwarded to the sign review committee, who schedules their hearing or meeting within 60 days. That is the same 60 days that's contained in the existing bylaw. So the sign review committee reviews the submission based on the bylaw, the design guidelines, and aesthetics. Assuming everything is in order and in place, that application moves back to the building commissioner for issuance of a permit. If the sign review committee has some concerns and requires additional information or modifications, they will hand that back to the applicant, and then they will take it up again. And assuming they have met all of those requirements and conditions of the sign review committee, that will, again, send them back down that approved lane right to the end, which is their sign permit. So if the applicant disagrees with the sign review committee for reasons which they may have, legitimate reasons they may have, they will submit their appeal of that decision to the Board of Appeals. So the Board of Appeals would determine whether to override or uphold the sign review committee's recommendations. If they uphold the sign review committee recommendation, then again, the applicant is able to go back to the sign review committee and make their case again, based on the findings of the zoning board, or the ZBA would override the sign review committee altogether, and then they would be able to receive their sign permit. So a special permit or variance under this new bylaw would follow the same process as any special permit or variance. It's going to look like a typical application to the sign review committee. The sign review committee's recommendations are binding upon the zoning board, and any waiver that the sign review committee issues does not have to be repeated by the Board of Appeals. So an applicant won't be asked to sort of make their case twice on a dimensional waiver. So next application, next slide rather. There was a lot of, I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. There was a lot of discussion about the distinction between the community signs, sandwich board signs that are issued, the permits that are issued through the select board's office. That is a separate process. This particular temporary sidewalk sign is specific to businesses. If the sandwich board sign is located in the public right-of-way, there is a process where it has to be reviewed and approved by the town engineer. So we've had some consultation on that as well. I think that's an improvement with that. That's otherwise very similar process in terms of how it gets reviewed and approved. Okay, next. So this is probably the meat of it, the scope of the current bylaw. So this table says it applies only to business districts. I can read to you the language that's in the current bylaw for signs that are outside of the business districts. There's literally like 2 sentences. One is, pre-existing non-conforming signs are able to continue, right? So that would be a business that's in a residential zone, a long-time business in a residential zone. And then the other sentence is, any sign permitted by the select board is necessary for public safety or the public health. So that's literally it in terms of language for signs in residential zones. And as a lot of you probably know, very limited areas in the town are zoned for business. I think there's like 3 business zones in the town. So a lot of these signs are located in residential zones. So what this bylaw has done is it's created a very sort of a clear process for a lot of these signs that are located in these residential zones. And it provides standards so that it's not just sort of this kind of sort of broad statement that the sign is in the public good, because that's hard to define. And an applicant just wants a clear path, I think. That's my experience, is they're looking for a clear path. Even if it's a little bit more involved, if it's clear and they can plan for it, they're happy. They just want to know sort of like, how do I get from A to B? That's my experience. So in terms of definitions, the way this was drafted, the definitions for signs are contained in the definitions section of the bylaw as opposed to in the sign bylaw part of the bylaw. That's a much better way to do things, because your definitions would apply to any sort of instance or implication like in the overall bylaw, because they're in that definition section. So it's much more clear, in my opinion. The permit process, existing building commissioner to the sign review committee, and then an appeal would be to the select board. That has been eliminated to make it consistent with the remainder of the bylaw, where all appeals would go to the zoning board of appeals. Follows the same process. Consistency, everybody knows how many days, what the process is, what you need to do. So it just again, I think a much better way to do things. Special provisions, none in the existing bylaw. This new bylaw adds rules for restaurants, fuel stations, bed and breakfast, directional signs. The non-conforming signs, another one, changes allowed only with good cause. Again, really hard to define. Non-conforming signs in the proposal are altered only with special permit under Chapter 48, Section 6. Again, waivers in existing additional allowable area for good cause. So in the proposed zoning, waivers are limited to plus 25% dimension, plus 25% area, plus 50% setback, and they must meet very specific criteria that's outlined in the bylaw. Total sign area. So this reduces the amount of square footage that a business is allowed to have from 2 square feet per linear foot to 1 square foot per linear foot. So the analysis that was conducted during the review process was that the majority of recent sign applications were under this, this new 1 square foot per linear foot. What this bylaw does is it allows the sign review committee to increase that square footage up to 25%. It also includes very generous options for temporary signs, where the temporary signs do not count towards the square footage. And those would be external banners as well, like we talked about, native corn, or or like a restaurant that was having a special function for like a Mother's Day brunch or something like that. So definitely like more permissive with things like that. Also, only one side of a freestanding sign is now included in the square footage. So that would give somebody that latitude to increase, for instance, their wall sign, because their freestanding sign wouldn't count for as much square footage. So awnings also a little bit more permissive. They didn't allow signage before, now they're allowing signage, which gives business owners another option for promoting their storefront. Window signs, so that has been reduced from 20% of the area to 10% of the window area, not blocking the middle third. Let's see, we talked about sidewalk and A-frame signs. Illumination, illuminated signs are allowed if steady, non-flashing, non-glare. That's the existing. This new bylaw has a lot of specific definitions around illumination. Certain illuminated signs are prohibited, very expressly prohibited. That's another thing this bylaw does, is it enumerates multiple exemptions, which should make things, again, easier, because you can go to that exemption list. I think it's got 20+ items on it, and you'll know, hopefully, right, very, very quickly if you don't even need to seek a permit at all. Reverse lit eternal illumination requires special permit. And like I said before, that would follow the same process that you would follow to receive a special permit through the Zoning Board of Appeals. Projecting signs, the clearance on those has increased from 8 feet to 10 feet, height up to 20 feet, but the overall size is the same, 6 square feet from existing to proposed. Freestanding signs, there's now an 8-foot height limit. There was no height limit before. Directory signs, a bit more permissive. There's additional square footage per tenant. Temporary signs, same requirement, 45 days. I talked about the temporary sale signs. So I think that's it. And then I just kind of did a couple of images, for folks that aren't super familiar, and I certainly wasn't. I learned an awful lot about signs in the last 6 months. So El Barrio is an indirect lit wall sign. The Wallaston Golf Club is a freestanding sign. The next slide. Just a kind of a quick example of a window sign. I was trying to find some ones that were more local, but sandwich board A-frame. This next slide shows a reverse lit channel sign, directory sign, internally illuminated, billboard, blade or projecting sign, LED neon, which is prohibited, point of purchase display, and an awning sign. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Okay. Select Board, any comments on Article 42? No. Planning Board. I'm sorry, the Planning Board already went. Warrant Committee.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Fundling, Town Meeting Member Precinct 3 and Chair of the Warrant Committee. Madam Moderator, since this is the last article of the annual town meeting, I would like to take a moment to thank my committee, sitting to my right. I'm only as strong as the team that supports me, and they were all a delight to work with. I'd like to thank you, Madam Moderator, for appointing this group, and I would like to thank the town meeting members for making our special form of citizen government possible. On to the article. Yes, you can, if the more you clap for yourself, the longer we're here, so think about it.
Stealing my words, Jay. Go ahead.
Regarding this article, a version of this article was considered for the fall town meeting, which was pulled before the warrant was printed, and which was 25 pages. Thanks to the work of the new town council and the new town planner who just spoke to us, it is now 13 pages. It is much tighter and much easier to follow. I want to thank, I don't know if I can credit the town council or the town planner, but I'll give them both credit for making a much tighter and easier to understand article. Thank you for that. The warrant committee feels that the clear and understandable process laid out in this proposal is an improvement to the current bylaw and should be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fundling. Okay. Yes, Ms. Hall.
I just want to add that at our public hearing, the planning board's vote was unanimously in support of this article, all members. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Hall. Okay, I see over here, and then back to you.
Thank you. Andres Lessing, Precinct 8. So I moved to just make a friendly amendment as much as I want to go home. And so I moved to amend Article 42 in the definition of sign guidelines handbook in Section 1 to change in consultation with the Planning Board and the Sign Review Committee to subject to a majority vote of the Planning Board and a duly noticed, in consultation with the Planning Board and the Sign Review Committee, 2, subject to a majority vote of the Planning Board at a duly noted public meeting. The handbook sets the practical sign standards for all of Milton, and as written, the planning department can change these standards on their own. This amendment will require a formal public vote before any of these changes take place. And I'm happy to give the wording.
Okay, so you're making a motion to amend. Can you speak with the warrant committee clerk about the specific motion? Oh, thank you. Again, if people want to go ahead and take a break while this is sorted out, don't have to get up. For the motion to amend, it's projected on the screen where it says Sign Guidelines Handbook, Sign and Facade Design Handbook for design review to be updated from time to time by the Planning Department. Strike in consultation with the Planning Board and Sign Review Committee, and instead add subject to a majority vote of the Planning Board at a duly noted public hearing. So the whole thing reads, Sign and Facade Design Handbook for design review to be updated from time to time by the Planning Department, subject to a majority vote of the Planning Board at a duly noted public hearing. May I hear from the Select Board? Mr. Daly? I'm just noting, however, that now the language has been changed, so it says sign guidelines handbook, sign and facade design handbook for design review to be updated from time to time by the planning department and the sign review committee, subject to a majority vote of the planning board at a duly noted public meeting. Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Winston Daly, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2, Select Board Chair. We would like to hear from the Planning Board first before making our vote.
Thank you. Chair Hall. Okay. I see that we have new language on the screen, which reads, Sign and Facade Design Handbook for design review to be updated from time to time by the Planning Department in consultation with the Sign Review Committee, subject to a majority vote of the Planning Board at a duly noticed public meeting. Does the chair of the Planning Board have comments about this?
The planning board has voted to support this amendment.
Thank you, Chair Hall. Yes. So Ms. Agostino asked if this could be considered a friendly amendment. Let's let the warrant committee vote, and I'll tell you what the answer to that question is. I don't want to influence anybody, depending on what happens next.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Funling, Town Meeting Member Precinct 3 and Chair of the Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee supports this amendment.
Yes, okay, then it can be. Thank you. So the article will now be Article 41 as amended. 42, excuse me. I'd like to also make a point that prior to town meeting, Mr. Arthur Doyle had made a friendly amendment which was accepted by both the Planning Board and the Warrant Committee, and I wonder if the Warrant Committee clerk can show that. He simply added a couple words. Here, Section 275, 3.25.5b exemptions shall read as follows. Signs erected or required by any federal, state, or local government, including but not limited to signs related to traffic, safety, warnings, and signs containing an official announcement or designation. Because that was adopted by the Warrant Committee prior to town meeting, this is the recommendation of the Warrant Committee. So when we vote, this will be incorporated, as well as the amendment that we just had. I see additional people wishing to talk. We'll come over here, and then we'll go to Mr. Chimman, Mr. Curran, and then over to Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Tom Sharkey from Precinct 5. Real quick question. With regard to the non-commercial signs, is there any restrictions in this new bylaw that would affect people holding signs over Route 3 or in town or on private property, protest signs or any other signs of free speech?
I'm sorry, Mr. Sharkey, is that a question on the motion to amend or the motion?
Are we still voting on, I thought we were voting on
no,
the
you're
entire.
right. Go ahead, you're right, go ahead.
We're talking to the entire amendment.
Go ahead, go ahead.
So that's just a question to the Planning Committee. Are there any restrictions now with this new bylaw that would be imposed upon people who would like to hold signs up for any reason?
No. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chimman, then Mr. Curran, and then we'll come back to Mr. Doyle.
So my concern is, Michael Chipman, Precinct 2, my concern is free speech. And as written right now, this proposed bylaw is not adequate. And I'm going to take you through why. Because I don't think any government, whether it's the planning board or town meeting or the select board, has any right to tell you whether you can put a Make America Great Again sign on your yard or a Black Lives Matter sign or whatever sign, free speech sign. And those are typically corrugated plastic signs that are mounted on metal brackets which are inserted in the dirt. And the only thing holding them in is friction and lack of wind. So if you go on page 73 to the definition of sign temporary, you'll see the term temporary sign means any sign which by its design or message advertises or announces a use or activity that is limited in duration. That doesn't cover a Make America Great sign. That's not a use or activity of a limited duration. But it goes on, and or is not permanently installed. provided the sign is displayed for no longer than 45 consecutive days. Not permanently installed certainly describes a typical Make America Great sign, a typical Black Lives Matter sign. But, well, if you go to the exemptions, which is on page 73, paragraph 14, temporary signs are exempt from this bylaw. But only if they're only displayed for 45 days. If they're displayed for more than 45 days, it's not a temporary sign. So it's not exempt if it's displayed for more than 45 days. It has to comply with signage requirements. And as I said, I don't think the government has any business telling you whether you can display your Make America Great sign for more than 45 days. They just don't have any business saying that. But if you go back to the definitions on page 72, the definition of sign, non-commercial, a sign used as expression of free speech. That sounds really good. That definitely is the two examples I've been saying, Make America Great or Black Lives Matter, that is an expression of free speech. But if you go to the exemption regarding that type of sign, and that's on page 75, paragraph 17, non-commercial signs are exempt, provided the sign complies with section 10 of this bylaw. If you go to section 10, which is on page 81, first there's a setback requirement. The sign can't be less than 15 feet from property lines. Typically, when people put these signs up, they're within 15 feet of the sidewalk. But much more troublesome is section 10, subsection D, compliance with building code. This bylaw, if it's passed, says that non-commercial signs, the ones that display free speech, have to comply with the Massachusetts Building Code. And you won't be surprised to find out the building code has wind load requirements, concrete footing requirements. The typical free speech sign does not have those things, does not comply with the building code. So the Make America Great sign you want to put on your private property lawn, the exemption for non-commercial sign, an expression of free speech, doesn't do you any good because your sign is not going to comply with the Massachusetts Building Code. And as I said before, this exemption for temporary signs doesn't do you any good because you want to display it for more than 45 days. So this is, if it's passed, is an infringement of free speech that the Milton government, whether it's the planning board, whether it's town meeting, whether it's the select board, has no business imposing. And if it stays like that, I think this bylaw has to be sent back for further review. And there's additional problems with the exemptions. And going back to page 75, section 5, subsection B, exemptions, paragraph 13, for example. This allows historic markers to be erected, which is good, but they can't exceed 2 square feet in area. 2 square feet is small for a sign. That provision, I suspect, will make all current historic markers non-conforming. Now, there's a section that says non-conforming signs are grandfathered in. They don't have to take them down. But why are we restricting new historic marker signs to such a tiny sign? And just to give you a picture, the typical candidate political sign before elections that we all had in our yards, a couple weeks ago, that's 3 square feet. That's 3 square feet. So it can't even be as big as a typical candidate sign. What is 2 square feet is what this says about street signs. That's in paragraph 9. Those could be not more than 2 square feet. A street sign. Compare it to signs indicating a property is for sale, that can be 6 square feet. So the typical historic marker that we see when we're on road trips and you stop and look at it and has that curvy crest, that's way more than 2 square feet. And I don't know why we're saying historic markers can't be that big. I had ChatGPT tell me what the size of a typical historic marker is, and it's 8.75 square feet. Now, as I said before, temporary signs in paragraph 14 are exempt. But if we go down to paragraph 20, temporary signs with a street associated with a street fair, festival, or similar special event are exempt. Well, they're temporary signs. You don't need that paragraph 20 is just flat out redundant. And it also makes this thing unconstitutional because to be constitutional, you can't regulate based on content. You can't favor one type of sign over another or disfavor a sign because of its content. So paragraph 20, as it reads right now, is a screaming hand wave saying this is unconstitutional. It's a 2015 unanimous Supreme Court decision that said if you have to look at the content, then it's highly likely it's unconstitutional unless there's a compelling government interest. And there's no compelling government interest about street fair signs or festival signs. So I think there's problems with this, most significantly regarding free speech. And I have 3 friendly amendments to propose, and if they don't get accepted, then I would like to propose each of them individually. The first is to take out on paragraph 17 of the exemptions regarding non-commercial signs, just end it at non-commercial signs and take out provided the sign complies with section 10 of this bylaw, because that imposes restrictions that are untenable for someone who wants to put a free speech sign on their lawn. My second proposed friendly amendment is to make historic marker signs, allow them to be the same size as a for sale sign in front of a house, which is not exceeding 10 square feet. And my third friendly amendment is to delete paragraph 20, which is redundant of paragraph 14 and makes the bylaw unconstitutional.
Thank you, Mr. Chinman. I heard a second. All right. Can you take that, those 3 potential friendly amendments over to the town clerk? By the warrant committee clerk.
I'm sorry, I said 10 square feet was the for sale sign. That's actually 6, but in paragraph 10, names of buildings, date of erection, monumental citations, and commemorative tablets, those are allowed to be 10, which strikes me as similar to a historic marker. That's why I came up with the 10.
Mr. Chinman's proposed amendment is set forth here. In paragraph 13, it says, signs sanctioned by the Town of Milton Historical Commission, which display historical information about buildings, properties, people, and the like, and not exceeding, strike 2, add 10 square feet in area. Such signs may be wall or ground mounted. In addition, section 17, non-commercial signs, striking out provided the sign complies with section 10 of this bylaw. And finally, 20, which is stricken. While we're waiting for the planning board to take a vote, if there's anyone other than Mr. Curran and Mr. Chinman who would like to speak on this article, if you can come down just in the interest of time. Otherwise, we'll hear from the planning board when they're ready. Thank you, Chair Hall.
The planning board is in support of the amendments as proposed.
Okay. I will repeat what Ms. Agostino said. Ms. Agostino is from Precinct 9, and she said that she recommended that now that the planning board has voted in support of the article, that we view this as a friendly amendment and continue on with the discussion. I would like to hear, however, from the warrant committee and the select board. Mr. Fundling?
Jay Fundling, Town Meeting Member Precinct 3 and Chair of the Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee supports the proposed amendment.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Agostino?
A point of order is generally someone can stand and make their point of order. The point of order was not correctly understood, so I want to be sure, there's a lot of new members, that we expedite things in the future by following the process. After 43 years being in this room, it's very simple. The planning board submitted the article. The planning board twice now has said that they support the amendment. Then the planning board stands up and notifies the moderator that we will accept this as a friendly motion. There's no need for the warrant committee to vote because the planning board owns the article. And they stand up and state we accept this as a friendly amendment, and then it's voted on by everyone. And that's the point of order. You can review prior town meetings for 45, 50 years.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Agostino. Thank you. And now we have Mr. Curran waiting to be heard. Mr. Curran?
Joseph Curran, Precinct 7. I don't often get to speak last, so thank you. My question really has to do with the non-conforming signs in the commercial district, and it's my understanding that pylon signs are not allowed in that district. And to give you an example, the Dunkin' Donuts sign and the Citizens Bank sign are both examples of pylon signs, and I don't believe they were allowed under the old sign bylaw. And I'm trying to understand, and it might be in the handbook, it might be somewhere here, it wasn't up on the screen, whether or not now pylon signs are permitted and what the square footage of those signs might be. And in my, I guess my sign profession, where I've done building of signs across North America, we often refer to the Wallaston Golf Club sign as a monument sign, and the Dunkin' Donuts and Citizens Bank would be a pylon sign. And then it's important for me to understand if the bylaw addresses whether any of those signs are face lit, halo lit, or externally illuminated.
Thank you, Mr. Curran. I don't know if that's something that Ms. Manning can speak to.
So thank you so much for that clarification on the monument sign. So I would put those types of signs in the freestanding sign category as defined in this bylaw. You're going to have limitations on height and limitations on square footage that would apply otherwise. To any sign in the business district. If there was a desire to have a more clear definition of a pylon sign, I think that would make sense. I know there's reference in the special provisions for fuel station signs. In terms of freestanding sign identifying the business not to exceed 24 square feet in sign area and up to 12 feet in height. So my understanding is that we're reviewing those as freestanding signs and the requirements of a freestanding sign. Helpful? Okay.
Okay. Now, we will move to a vote on Article 42. As a reminder, this has to be a 2/3 vote. And the recommendation of the Warrant Committee is, excuse me one second. That the town vote to approve the article as printed in the warrant as amended. Okay, we can open it up for a vote. As a reminder, this is a 2/3 vote required. Please remember, before you leave, to take your trash and all your belongings with you. – 90% to 8%, 160 yes, 15 no. It passes the 2/3. Yes, motion to dissolve.
Second. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, we are dissolved. See you at the next town meeting. Thank you, everyone.